We all know the world of Ice and Fire is full of wild events and even crazier people, but the religions they follow are often the most unhinged part of it all. From a faith based on murder to praying to a living tree, let's break down every religion in the series. So, Westeros splits up between a handful of major religions, and the lines between them follow culture as much as they follow geography. The Faith of the Seven runs most of the south and center, places like the Reach, the Westerlands, the Riverlands, the Stormlands, and a lot of the Crownlands. The Old Gods hold strong in the north and past the Wall. The Drowned God belongs to the Iron Islands. Then, when you cross to Essos, the map gets even bigger with belief systems like the Lord of Light, the Many-Faced God, and other faiths tied to specific cities and cultures. The show zeroes in on religions that smash into the political storyline. The books go wider and show how belief moves through trade, slavery, migration, and war. The Faith of the Seven is the closest thing Westeros has to a state religion with real structure. It arrived with the Andals when they invaded from Essos a long time ago, and it pushed across most of the continent, while the older faiths got shoved back. The faith says there's one God with 7 different faces, and people pray to whichever face fits what they need. The Father handles justice and judgment. The Mother covers mercy and protection. The Warrior stands for courage and winning battles. The Smith represents work and craft. The Maiden is about youth and innocence. The Crone brings wisdom and advice. The Stranger is death and whatever comes after. Even people who trust the other 6 get nervous talking about the Stranger, because the Stranger reminds everyone that it all ends the same way, no matter who you are. Since the faith has organization, it reaches far and holds real power. Septons and septas run prayers, weddings, and funerals. Big noble families often hire septas to teach their daughters, drill them on manners, and make sure they live life according to what counts as proper to the faith and its society. The religion also has holy buildings everywhere, from tiny village septs to massive city temples filled with statues, candles, crystals, and carved images. In the show, the Great Sept of Baelor becomes a symbol of both holiness and political theater. The faith also has a center of power through the High Septon, and that makes a huge impact because the faith can not only bless kings, but also push back against their rulings. For centuries, the faith had its own warrior orders, armed religious groups that fought for the religion and its ability to maintain strong influence. Those orders got shut down eventually, but people never totally forgot about them. When the whole realm falls apart into chaos, the faith comes roaring back through public rage, hunger, and disgust at how corrupt the nobles are. That's why the High Sparrow movement hits so hard in the show. It's a religious explosion, powered by the feeling that the rich and powerful broke their end of the deal. The books make the faith's inside politics even messier, with different groups, different levels of corruption, and tons of people weaponizing holiness. That tension only gets sharper when the Targaryens show up in history, because the faith and Valyrian customs clash hard. The faith calls incest a sin, and the Targaryens built their whole bloodline on marrying siblings. Early Targaryen rule is basically one long negotiation with the faith, sometimes peaceful, sometimes violent, but always political. The show doesn't dig as deep into that history, but it helps explain why religious approval matters so much in King's Landing. A crown can sit on someone's head, but the faith still decides whether everyone sees that crown as legit or cursed. Up north, the Old Gods work completely differently. There's no big hierarchy, no central temple, and no holy book everyone quotes from. Old Gods worship is quiet, local, and tied to the surrounding land. People pray in God's woods, usually in front of a heart tree, which is a weirwood with a face carved into it. In the north, a heart tree isn't just a tree that people respect. It's treated like it can see and hear. It's a witness to everything around it. That's why promises made in front of a heart tree feel heavier than regular political deals or promises. The faith suggests the land itself remembers and will hold people accountable. The Old Gods connect to the oldest history in Westeros, linked to the children of the forest and the first men. Long before the Andals showed up with their 7-faced god, the first men came to Westeros and fought the children. Eventually, they made peace, and part of that peace involved sacred places and sacredness. When the Andals came later, They brought the faith of the Seven and chopped down a ton of weirwoods in the south, which is why the old gods ended up mostly as a northern thing. The North's isolation keeps it alive, but so does the culture. Northern identity is fused to the idea that old promises still count. In the show, the old gods tie closely to the Stark family and Winterfell's godswood. That spot becomes a calm place where characters say things they won't say anywhere else. In the books, the old gods connect even more directly to magic. Warging, green seeing, and the strange power running through weirwoods all make the old gods feel less like ancient mythology and more like a living network. The old gods don't have priests, but the world itself becomes the connection. When the story goes deep into Bran's arc, the religion starts feeling like a doorway into older history, where belief and supernatural power blur together. Then there's the drowned god, the faith of the Ironborn, and it matches their culture perfectly. The Ironborn live on rough islands where the sea feeds them and kills them, so their god is basically the sea and its unstable nature turned divine. The drowned god gets worshipped through saltwater, storms, and the idea that suffering proves you're strong. Their rituals are blunt and physical. The most famous one is the drowning ceremony, where someone gets shoved underwater and then pulled back up. It's like baptism mixed with rehearsing your own death. Surviving it means the drowned god accepted you, and you got reborn into the faith. Ironborn prayers are short and forceful because you need to shout them over wind and waves. What is dead may never die packs their whole theology into one simple line. It means drowning isn't the end. It's a transformation. It also fits how the Ironborn think that weakness is shameful and endurance is holy. The faith includes the storm god as an enemy, blamed for storms and shipwrecks, which turns weather into a spiritual war. In the show, this religion gets spotlighted through Euron's politics, especially when leaders use religious language to back up their claims to rule, raid, and kill. In the books, the drowned god feels even more dangerous because characters like Aeron Greyjoy treat religious duty as the only thing keeping the Ironborn from completely losing it. Across the Narrow Sea, the Lord of Light, also called R'hllor, is one of the biggest religions in the world, and it works like a global movement. This faith runs on fire and the idea of a cosmic war. Believers say R'hllor is the one true god of light, life, and flame, and there's a dark enemy on the other side, often tied to cold, darkness, and death. The religion doesn't treat evil like just human weakness, but as an actual opposing force in the universe. That makes the faith feel urgent, not powerful, because every crisis becomes part of a bigger fight. Fire sits at the center of things because it's both sacred and revealing. Red priests and priestesses stare into flames, looking for visions and signs. The show turns this into big moments with Melisandre and her fire prophecies, which carried a lot of hype in early seasons. The books do even more with it, because R'hllor worship runs deep in Essos, with major temples and huge crowds, especially in cities like Volantis. It's not some fringe cult, but the kind of religion that can control streets, sway leaders, and build mass belief through urgency and panic. The darkest part of R'hllor worship is sacrifice. Some followers think fire offerings are required, and some go all the way to burning people alive. That's not treated like a minor detail. It's part of how this faith can inspire hope while also justifying horror. It's one of the most chilling parts of the show. Believers can feel like they're saving the world even while doing things that look unforgivable to everyone else. That's why this religion lands so hard in the story. It's mystical, but also shows what happens when you mix moral pressure with fear of the apocalypse. In Braavos, faith takes a totally different shape with the many-faced god. This is the religion tied to the Faceless Men, the assassin group that treats death as a sacred gift. The core belief is as simple as it is creepy. Every culture has a god or image tied to death. Some see death as a stranger, some see it as a monster, some see it as a judge. The Faceless Men think all those images are just masks worn by the same thing. Death is the only god everyone truly serves, because everyone dies. That's why they call it the many-faced god, one god wearing endless faces across the world. This belief turns physical inside the House of Black and White, the Faceless Men's temple. It's packed with icons of different death gods from different cultures, all sitting side by side. The message in this place is that all religions eventually point here at their core, because all endings meet in the same spot. Anything that anyone believes will eventually end in their death. In the books, the many-faced god gets explicitly described as being known by different names in different places, like the Black Goat in Qohor, the Lion of Night in Yiti, and the Stranger in the Faith of the Seven. Now, that's not saying those religions are identical in practice. It's saying the faceless men interpret them that way, because they've built an entire worldview around death being the final truth. The faceless men don't see themselves as murderers, even though that's basically their sole occupation. They see themselves through a twisted lens, acting as servants delivering mercy, ending suffering, and fulfilling a sacred contract. That's why they refuse to kill for personal motives like revenge. A follower is supposed to become no one, stripping away who they are in any personal way to become a tool of the god alone. The show focuses on Arya's training, the loss of self, and the brutal discipline needed for the role. The books add more philosophy to the mix, including the idea that some people show up at the House of Black and White asking for relief from pain, and the temple gives them a peaceful death. That makes the place part hospice, part shrine, which makes it even more unsettling. Further south in Essos, especially around Slaver's Bay, religion shows up through the Giscari faith, mostly through its clergy. The best known figures are the Graces, priestesses who work in the big temples of the region. The show makes the Temple of the Graces important in Meereen, because it's tied to burial rites and public honor. That's why Hizdar zo Loraq pushes so hard to bury his father there. Those rituals turn deeply political by nature of how things have escalated in the region. When a city treats a temple as the right place for the dead, controlling access to that temple becomes a form of power. In the books, the Graces get more detail, including the idea that they divide into different roles, with different colors marking different jobs. Some focus on healing, some on ceremonies, and some work in the temple's pleasure gardens. The exact gods behind Giscari religion aren't laid out as clearly as the gods of Westeros, but the religion still shapes Meereenese identity. It ties public life to tradition and gives the elite a sacred language to defend their social order, even when that order runs on slavery. The Great Shepherd is another major religion, and it matters early through Mirri Maz Duur. The Great Shepherd is the god of the Lázarine, a peaceful people sometimes called the Lamb Men. Their religion matches their culture. They herd sheep, live in settled villages, and preach a message about the flock. In this belief, humanity is one flock under the Great Shepherd's care, and that idea pushes healing and peace instead of war or disunity. Mirri calls herself a god's wife, a religious healer, and she says her job is helping the shepherd's lambs wherever she finds them. That gentle belief crashes into brutal reality when the Lázarine get attacked and enslaved. It creates one of the strongest contrasts in the series. A faith teaching unity and care is forced to exist in a world that treats people like property. The show uses this mainly through Mirri's story with Daenerys and Drogo. The books keep reminding you that the Great Shepherd is still part of the wider world, and even shows how this faith can create anger and doubt when believers ask why the shepherd lets lambs get slaughtered by wolves. And the Great Shepherd isn't the only Essos faith tied to a specific people and homeland. Mother Rhoyne is the river goddess of the Rhoynar, and she's tied to the River Rhoyne in Essos, the greatest symbol their people ever had. For the Rhoynar, the river wasn't just simple geography. It was protection, identity, and almost a living parent, which is why the faith frames the Rhoyne as a nurturing, guiding mother. This religion matters historically because the Rhoynar didn't stay there forever. After wars and conquest, many of them fled west under leaders like Nymeria, eventually joining with the peoples of Dorne. Over time, Rhoynar culture mixed into Dorne, and the faith of the Seven became dominant there. But the Rhoynar legacy never disappears. Even if Mother Rhoyne isn't worshipped openly the way the Seven are, the idea of the river as a sacred mother survives in Rhoynar identity, and in why Dorne still feels distinct from the rest of Westeros. Dothraki religion centers on the Great Stallion, and again, the match between culture and God is obvious. For the Dothraki, horses aren't just transportation. Horses are status, war, survival, and identity. So their main divine symbol is a stallion so powerful, it feels like the spirit of their entire people. The Dothraki connect strength and conquest to spiritual meaning. Life is conquest, and failure to conquest is failure to live. A powerful call isn't only a leader. He's proof the Great Stallion favors him. Prophecy plays a role here too, because the Dothraki have the idea of a world-conquering figure, often tied to the stallion who mounts the world. That prophecy's a huge factor because it fuels a culture of war and aggression. It can also turn fear into worship when outsiders realize the Dothraki don't see their expansion as simple greed. They see it as the natural order. This whole belief is a large part of why Dany's child Rhaego was killed, as it was feared he would be the stallion who mounts the world. They don't have 24/7 violence though. Vias Dothrak itself is sacred space in practice, even for a violent culture, because bloodshed is forbidden there, and breaking that rule counts as a curse. So even among barbarians, there's a level of civility. The Moonsingers are a smaller religion in the story, but they connect to one of the most important origin myths in Essos. Moonsingers are priestesses of the Jogos Nai, nomadic riders from the Far East. Their belief system runs on prophecy and guidance, and their priestesses get treated as spiritual authorities who read signs and sing sacred songs. What makes them especially interesting is that their religion spreads way beyond their homeland, because Moonsingers were among the enslaved people who helped found Braavos. In Braavosi history, a group of enslaved women from Jogos Nai lands predicted a hidden spot where escaping ships could shelter, a foggy lagoon protected by hills and sea rocks. That prophecy gets credit as one reason the refugees survived, which makes the Moonsingers part of Braavos' founding identity, not just an exotic detail from far away. The show doesn't spend much time on Moonsingers as a religion, but the idea fits into Braavos' wider theme. Braavos is a city built by runaways, so it's full of mixed beliefs and cultures. The books lean into that further, showing Braavos as a unique place where many faiths can exist on the same streets, sometimes competing, sometimes blending, sometimes just tolerating each other, because the city is too diverse to force one set of rules on everyone or seek a level of dominance. Norvos introduces another kind of faith, where religion isn't just personal belief, it's the government itself. The city gets run by bearded priests, religious leaders who also control politics and law. In practice, Norvos is a theocracy. The priests pick officials, shape the rules, and keep power inside their religious structure. Even their god's name gets treated as secret, something outsiders aren't supposed to speak or write down. That secrecy turns the faith into a wall around the city's identity. The show mentions Norvos mostly in passing, but the books use it as one more example of how different the free cities can be, and how religion can become the entire framework of public life. The Church of Starry Wisdom is one of the stranger religions in the world, because it gets described like a cult that pops up in many port cities, often with a creepy reputation. It has a high priest, and it's tied to legends connecting it to Yi-Ti, and an ancient figure sometimes blamed for dark, unnatural practices. Unlike most religions, rooted in one people and one place, this one spreads through trade routes and coastal cities, which gives it the vibe of a secret network. The story doesn't fully explain what the church actually believes or does, and that mystery is part of why it stands out. In a world where so many faiths are clearly tied to culture, a shadowy port religion feels like something that moves quietly, gathering influence without needing armies. And finally, there are the old gods of Valyria, the religion of the Valyrian freehold before the Doom. This is one of the hardest faiths to nail down, because so much of Valyria's inner life got destroyed, and what's left is scattered in fragments, names, and old customs. What we know is that Valyria had multiple gods, and several dragons later owned by the Targaryens got named after Valyrian deities, which suggests those gods were once widely honored among dragon lords. Some later sources and histories describe Valyrian wedding ceremonies that involved cutting and mixing blood, sometimes using dragon glass, which ties Valyrian belief to blood, fire, and the idea that lineage is sacred. In the show, Valyrian religion stays mostly in the background because Valyria itself is already in ruins, and the focus is on present-day power. In the books, it sits like a ghost behind everything connected to dragons, bloodlines, and old magic. Even when characters don't pray to Valyrian gods, they still live in a world shaped by Valyria's legacy, where dragonfire once ruled half the map, and the fall of that empire still defines what people fear and want. Which of the religions in the series is most interesting to you? Are there any you find absolutely insane? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to see more Game of Thrones content, click the video on screen now.